partner with Axon, you immediately gain access to a full range of products and solutions designed to meet the complex needs of today's grower. We carry all major brands and sizes of tires and wheels. We specialize in large diameter wheels for large equipment. We have one of the largest OEM replacement wheel inventories in North America. Known for extreme flotation setups, duals, and triples, we have wheels for all makes and models of tractors, sprayers, combines, and grain carts. If we don't have the wheel in stock, we'll custom build, sandblast, and paint in-house. There isn't a more vast inventory in North America dedicated to helping dealers move more iron. With facilities on the West Coast and in the heart of the Midwest, leverage our 230,000 square feet of indoor inventory to solve any problem a grower may have. Move more iron with Axon.
Moving iron.
Hello and welcome to Moving Iron Podcast. Marcus with Shawn Hackett. This edition of Moving Iron Podcast is brought to you by Axon Tire, helping dealers move more iron for the past 100 years. For more information, go to axontire.com. Axon Tire would like to give all the loyal listeners of the Moving Iron Podcast a couple great offers. First, if you'd like to have a beanie, and I could use one today since we're having a calm blizzard. Let's put it like that. We're having one of those come through. Send an email to marketing@axontire.com and they'll send it to you in the mail just with all your details, and they'll get that over to you. Also, if you plan on attending the Moving Iron Summit coming up here in Nashville, Tennessee, September 11th through the 13th, and you're one of the first 150 people to sign up, you get a $50 discount off your registration from them too. So if you're interested in doing that, you can send me an email at movingironpodcast@movingironpodcast.com, or you can go over to the website and fill out all the information there. All the information's up. Room reservation, booking, tabs, and all those things are up and active. So check that out if you want to do that. Send an email to marketing@axontire.com for that free beanie, and just go over to the website to sign up for the Moving Iron Summit, and you will get that discount. So with that, go to movingironllc.com for that website, by the way. So check that out. All right. Valley Transportation has been hauling ag and construction equipment across the country for the past 33 years. Call Parker at 800-657-4910 for all your trucking needs at Valley Transportation. Our goal is to help you reach yours. And no matter how you buy your ag equipment, whether it's from a dealer, an auction, or a private party, AgDirect can help you finance it. You can even apply online at agdirect.com. Learn more about your financing options at agdirect.com. Tractor Zoom has access to over $20 billion in heavy equipment sales data. Sales data. Tractor Zoom's Iron Comps is the industry's trusted solution for transparent equipment values and auctionable pricing insights. Lastly, this podcast is brought to you by Anvil AppWorks. Their Dealer Connect CRMI app with integrated inventory management is an affordable Salesforce-based solution for your dealership. Create a connected customer experience and transform how you work today. Shawn is with Hackett Financial out of Boca Raton, Florida. He's nice enough to come on and talk about what's happening in the marketplace. So, Shawn, how you doing this morning, man?
I'm doing good. I got my winter gear on. As you can see, I'm feeling a little blue, but all is well.
That's good. That's clever. I like that. A little blue. That's good. That's good. So Shawn is out on the road hitting the speaking tour here pretty hard and heavy, and he's up in Wisconsin this morning. He was nice enough to take time to get on the podcast here and talk about what's happening. So Shawn, how you doing? And what do you who's your audience today? Are you doing some dairy work up there in Wisconsin?
I'm in Janesville. It's the DeLong Group. So I think it'll be an array of different producers of grains, and I'm sure, dairy for sure will be there. So, I'm kind of excited and looking forward to it here in Janesville, Wisconsin. And, it's 35 degrees. So I cannot complain about Wisconsin at this time of year to have 35. So I'm very fortunate to have it that warm here up right at this moment in time. So
yeah, it could be a lot worse than 35.
Could be a lot
in January in Wisconsin.
Yes,
definitely. All right. So what was that? Thursday? We had the January ending stocks come out, and we saw, of course, we had some big reactions. The markets, the expectations were under what the market was looking for. Which we'd been talking about that for some while here on this podcast, that these numbers were going to be lower than we anticipated. And And 2 years in a row, we saw it come through. You start taking a look at what's going on around us. Kind of a fizzle coming out of that, but yesterday you had a pretty good run in some stuff, and Argentina is. Every time I read my report about Argentina, they've cut their wheat crop, and they've cut this and they've cut that, and they're just struggling with this drought. So, I guess reactions to the report, last week's report, and then kind of what you've seen fill the gap here since then.
I mean, that the report last week was very important because it really pretty much told the market, even though demand's a little weak for corn and wheat, we don't have enough. We don't have much supply in the U.S. We're not going to have much supply in the U.S. That's it. Bottom line. And even though the soybean crop is going to be good, we don't know the second corn crop is going to be good yet, but we do know their soybean crop is going to be good. Things are so bad in Argentina, the worst since 1945, that according to our analysis and work that we did on some of the weather metrics we looked at, it's taking a lot of that away. And so when we look at the net exportable supplies that South America is going to have, it's not going to be up that much. And if we're looking ahead to renewable diesel, all the demand for bean oil, how much extra supply we're going to need domestically just to make that bean oil for this renewable diesel, our exports to the rest of the world for soybeans are going to be down sharply over the next 1 to 2 years. I think the market is saying, you know what? We need a huge crop in the U.S. to keep this thing right-sided up. And so I think we're pretty much, they're pretty close to putting South America at rest and focusing on, can the U.S. finally have a big crop? And I don't mean, I mean like, record acres, record yield, like big crop to get ahead of this thing. Obviously, we don't know that yet, but I think that the market's going to want to keep putting premium onto the market, especially in February, to make sure that those insurance reference price premiums on crop insurance get set high enough that the farmer doesn't even blink an eye about getting out there and rocking those planters as hard as they can.
Yeah. And it's, in my neck of the woods we're at right now, we've gotten, if this storm comes through like it's supposed to, and we get, close to another foot of snow, we'll have over 3 feet of snow so far this year, which is 3 feet more than we've had in the last, 5 years, it feels like. But we've had our typical big, winter blasts, and of course we get those kind of things, but our moisture over the last 3 years out here has been very limited. And it's the same as a story for the West. But you take a look at the western part of the United States right now, and which was the hardest hit by this drought. They're getting the most moisture, it seems like, comparatively to what we see on the eastern half of the United States. It's to a detriment somewhere. I had I'm getting ready to release one, but I had Dan Lewis on here, and he was, he's from Oregon, and they've had some pretty heavy rains. He's from that Portland area, around that Portland area, and they've had some pretty heavy rains there. Northern California's had some very heavy rains. Central California has had some heavy rains. You got to start looking at the mountain snowpack and what that looks like in the Western Rockies and where we're at now. There's significant amounts of moisture coming in, which is going to lead to some of that key, irrigation water and stuff that we see coming out of the mountains in the western half of the United States. Take a look what's going on in the east part of the United States too, and they've had some significant snow events and winter activity and those kind of things as well. So it's shaping up anyway, Shawn, kind of like you talked about here, where we're starting to see that El Nino effects take place, and we're starting to see more of this moisture patterns to move in the areas and really start to set in. So I guess, Shawn, taking a look what we have now, talk a little bit about the Glassberg cycle and where you're seeing that. Is that starting to shift a little bit? And we've talked about 23, 24, 25 where you're at, but are you looking at more of that 24 time period now for the Glassberg cycle to take effect?
No, I think one has to remember, a wet winter does not mean a wet summer. It could, but it's really, there's not really a direct correlation necessarily. In fact, in the Dust Bowl, we had some record snowpack in the winters before the summers came, and 110 degrees for 10 straight days in a row, and those kind of things, takes a lot of that moisture and it just evaporates it out. So I think we need to understand the difference between what winter can do, which means off to a good start. There's no question. And we have been saying we expect to get an early spring off to a great start, and that should put some bearish pressure on grain prices, in that March, early April timeframe. So that has part of the forecast hasn't changed at all. But we do not yet see any reason to think that we're going to move into an El Nino overall pattern until later in the year, which means that the Gleisberg cycle, especially for the eastern central grain belt, which has been the area that's missed the drought the last couple of 3 years. They've gotten the rains when the West has not gotten it. And we've been talking about a shift, a migration where it's kind of like a game of musical chairs. As the northern plains, as the West, as the southern plains. But it's time for the central eastern grain belt to get their moment, I believe. And I believe that the Gleisberg cycle is on the table for this year, because I don't think we're going to get the El Nino in time. And I would really, if you're going to get this crop really bad, you need to get Iowa, Illinois, and Indiana, and that southern half of Minnesota. You need to get that area under severe drought. They have not been under severe drought. They've had huge yields. It's made up for the terrible yields out west. But you want to have a 2012 20% down below trend kind of yield. You need those regions to get hit very, very hard. And I think that as of what we're standing here today, looking at where we're at, I don't see any reason to change that to 23. The probabilities are extremely elevated. The Gleisberg cycle could kick in this year. It may not. We have, it's a window of 23, 24, 25, but as you know, it cannot be an El Nino. And if El Nino is going to be 24, which I'm pretty confident it's going to be, then it's either going to be 23 or the El Nino is going to leave and 25 is on the table. It's going to be one of those 2 years. As I said, we verified this cycle going back to 955 to the present. So unless 11 centuries of repeated Gleisberg cycle verification, unless that fails to deliver this time, we would expect it. So we're on Gleisberg warning for this year, and we're going to be looking for those mid-late spring signs that it's on the way. By the way, a very interesting metric. We try to look at other regions and say, are some other regions popping up similarly to what they did in, let's say, 1933, before the 1934 drought? So we look at Argentina or South America. Brazil had very good rains. Argentina was red and purple in that year, exactly as it is today. I mean, it's almost, if I showed you the Palmer Drought Severity Index of South America in the growing season of 1933-34, you'd think I was showing you one for right now. It's amazing how similar it is. Now, that doesn't mean it's guaranteed that we're going to have the Gleisberg cycle, but we look for these repetitive patterns elsewhere to say that we're lining up for this to happen. And by the way, the winter of 33-34 was a very wet, heavy snowfall year for the U.S. winter. So I don't see any reason to think that 23 isn't an elevated chance for the Gleisberg cycle at this point. We have not changed that. Little shift in our forecast because our work says the Tonga eruption, is delaying the onset of El Nino from what would normally have been expected. And that looks to be the case right now. All the models all the recent models in the last, let's say, 2 or 3 days have all been backing away from El Nino arriving by the summer. They're all pushing it out into the fall. I think more of the models are going to start showing that pattern as time goes on. So that's the way it looks right now, Casey, from where we're sitting.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So you're in dairy country. So let's talk about what's going on over on the dairy market. We've seen a lot of erosion of margin over the course of this time frame, but we've seen it come back. It's been very volatile in what we've seen happening in the dairy market. So I guess, Shawn, as you look at dairy market right now, going into some very elevated feed costs as we keep watching, the price of corn kind of hover around that $7 mark. Looking at that, Shawn, what are your thoughts there?
We've pretty much priced milk around the world to not produce it. I mean, Europe's underwater. A good portion of the U.S. is underwater, especially out west. China, underwater. So we're going to have a significant setback and contraction in production in the back half of 23. Obviously, the big elephant in the room is global demand, especially demand from China because of their COVID chaos that's going on. They're really, really important to the price of milk on a global stage. That's the bad news. The good news is that they're going to get on the other side of this as we get into the second quarter onward, and we know the boomerang effect we had here with milk demand. We know the boomerang effect we had in Europe with milk demand when we came out of our respective COVID chaoses. So I really feel we're digging our heels in, with current prices here in the first quarter, and really putting in not only lows here in the US, but lows globally, and setting the stage for, a significant rebound in milk prices as we get into the second quarter onward. So, if I'm a cash buyer of milk, if I'm a processor, if I'm making cheese, if I'm making butter, and I'm looking at how do I, lock in some good margins on the processor side, boy, this looks like a pretty good place to be thinking about extending that cash coverage and getting yourself buttoned up, because we're pretty optimistic. We're almost close to pricing in the worst case scenario right now. So I guess the bad news is that's how we got here, and it's not fun for producers. The good news is I don't think it's going to last much longer.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. So you've talked quite extensively about this Glassberg cycle situation we see coming in, and the how that's going to affect feed prices, and if you're a cattle guy and you're out there looking at feed costs and those kind of things and locking in some of that stuff. Shawn, looking at this time frame we're in now, there's still a pretty elevated price, but if things continue down the path like you've been talking about, this could be just a pocket change comparatively to what it's going to be. So I guess looking at your kind of your thought process now, looking at those kind of things, and you start looking at feed costs, this time, going into the summertime when there could be some issues there. When do you feel we should be taking advantage of some of these feed costs that we're looking at here?
Well, all the moisture out west that you correctly identified is going to finally create some significant increase in supplies in alfalfa and hay and all those, horrendous high prices that we've had for the last couple of years that have been just crushing, livestock producers, especially dairy, for example. And so that's gonna come down. I mean, that for sure is going to come down. I think your best opportunity, Casey, to look for some kind of a low point would be March, early April, in the grains, on good start to the planting season, good moisture, getting off to a good start. So if I'm a livestock producer, I certainly would be looking for that window to get some cash coverage, or just put some upside protection on hedges, some hedging to the upside in case the Glassberg cycle kicks in. I think that's going to be your really important window to look for when a correction, and when it looks like a correction into the early part of the planting season, gives you that opportunity. So that's what we're gearing up for, and that's where we're getting our livestock producers geared up for, to be pouncing on that opportunity when it arrives.
Right on. All right, let's talk about hogs real quick, just because of what's happening over in China. About every fourth article I read is something to do with China and hogs, it seems like. So I guess if you look at what's going on with the hog market and what's happening in China, we've seen a report come out this morning that December imports were the largest since November 21 into China. So I guess looking at that, what are your thoughts on the hog market, and how do you think, how soon would you think China plays a part in getting the hog price back up?
Well, once China feels they're on the other side of this COVID reopening, and more importantly, not even the government, but when the people get confidence that they can go back out, go back to the restaurants, go back to work, go back to to normal daily life, and purchase things and do things and get something more than being boarded up in their homes. When they get confidence that they're on the other side of that, the demand for everything there is going to really take off, including the demand for pork. I know we have seen the domestic price for Chinese hog prices get hit pretty hard here in the last month. I think that's a function of the COVID chaos, some near-term demand loss. I also think it's an issue that they're under holiday. So, they just don't do anything right now. I think once the holidays are over and we get into, to that second quarter onward, and we start getting some more vibrant demand coming out of them, and some of the, remember, they consume a lot of pork during these New Year holiday periods. I think they're going to come back in. I do believe that the market will start to be bid up as a result of it. So, we got hit here a little bit here in January, as I've been worrying about. I'm not sure we're out of the woods just yet, but definitely think we could be looking at a low point in the entire livestock complex, including dairy, here in the first quarter, as we price in the worst case part of the demand issue that I see here in the first quarter before we get some better times ahead.
Okay. All right. Finally, Shawn, let's take a look at the cattle market. What's happening there? You've seen some really it's just been a pretty steady market. I mean, it's not, there's plenty of things out there to show that the price of cattle is going to stay where it's at until we start seeing some rebuilding of the herd and what we see happening there. Still a fair amount of liquidations going on just because of where we're at with feed costs and those kind of things, Shawn. So take a look at the cattle market and tell me what you think there.
Well, kind of like, hogs and milk, the demand's going to be pretty rough here in the first quarter. Prices have started to fall.
Yep.
I think the fats are down 5 or 6. And I mean, the feeders got really hit. And I've been warning about that. And I still think they got further to go to fully price in this demand air pocket that the Fed has induced and that the COVID chaos in China has induced. But once we priced it in, then we're going to reach the point of no animals, herd rebuilding. Yes, a Glyphosate cycle drought would provide some extra herd liquidation, but given that we've already herd liquidated so much, I think the pressure is going to be far, far less than it was, the last 2 or 3 years when we had a lot more animals that were really easy pickings for herd liquidation. So I really feel, and then of course, once we get the boomerang effect in China for meat proteins, and of course, we know we have this ongoing, it seems like never ending avian flu here in the US, egg prices, highest they've ever been in the history of egg prices, and chicken supplies down, all those, there's nothing good about the future supply of meat proteins as we get to the second quarter onward. And the only thing we have right now is a demand problem, which I don't think is going to last beyond the first quarter. So I'm very optimistic on cattle prices, second quarter onward, but I'm still a bit cautious here. I still think we have more downside to go before, we fully price in. How bad is this demand side air pocket right now?
Right on. Okay. All right, Shawn, good stuff as usual. Folks want to reach out to you and get more information about what's happening over at Hackett Financial. What's the best way to do that?
Our website is Hackett, Hackett, advisors.com. All kinds of information, interviews on there that go over our work on climate, on capital flows, to see if how we look at the world and how we price forecast ag markets could be of value to your listeners.
Right on. Well, Shawn, appreciate you being on the podcast, man. Safe travels.
Will do. Sounds good, Casey. We'll do this from South Dakota on Thursday.
Cool. It's only supposed to be I think it's supposed to be negative 22 degrees there. So it's balmy this time of year.
I think 15, which actually for South Dakota this time of the year, I will take.
Positive temperatures.
Anything that's a positive is positive for me.
That's good. All right. Take care of yourself, man.
All right. Sounds good, Casey. Thanks.
I'm Casey Seymour with Moving Iron Podcast. Check me out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Moving Iron LLC. Go to Moving Iron Podcast on LinkedIn. Go to the Moving Iron YouTube channel, which is the Moving Iron Podcast YouTube channel. Check that out. Also go to Moving Iron LLC for everything Moving Iron related. More information about the Moving Iron Sound will be popping up here directly. So we'll have some more information about speakers and whatnot as they come around. So we'll be able to see what that looks like too. So with that, I am Casey Seymour. We're Shawn Hackett. Smooth Smart, folks. Oh, one more thing. If you're a dealer out there and you're looking for someone to help you with your parts and service business, give my friend Wayne Brozick a call. I worked with him for a long time. He started up a training and a consulting firm. We've all been around that, as well as some sales and leadership training as well too. But if you're looking for someone that really understands what it means to go to the parts department and the service department every day and go to work, give my friend Wayne Brozick a call over at wbglobalservices.com. So with that, I'm Casey Seymour with Shawn Hackett. Smooth Smart, folks. Out.
Moving iron in the 21st century. Hardwood